Warning, this episode may contain triggering content about death and suicide. Listener discretion is advised. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Ampersand podcast, where two can be true and where we explore the ampersands in every situation and circumstance. Y'all, because you know the catchphrase, two things can be true at once. Okay, first things first. Forgive me for not posting as punctually as I should have. There was a lot of moving parts going on in the last week or so. I had to go to New York for a concert that I was participating in, a showcase with So Far Sounds. I also, because y'all know I be singing Let Be in a Gang, and I also had to celebrate my cousin's birthday. So that took the majority of my time and free time. And when I did try to record, baby, it did not go as planned. Okay? It's too much damn noise out there in New York. I don't see how people get anything done. Okay? So we are here today. Today's episode, or this week's episode, was going to be something different. It was going to chronicle my trip to New York City and all of the revelations I got about myself, discovering, things about my personality that were not illuminated before this time, or even triggers that I had that was, illuminated, that I thought I had laid to rest about that trip. So that episode will be coming more than likely at a later time, if I remember, y'all, because my mind be bad. Okay, so you know what, words are powerful. My mind ain't bad. It carries a lot of things at once, and it prioritizes things in the way it. Okay, all right. So let's keep it moving. So yes, that episode should be coming later on, but today we're going to be talking about depression, and we're going to be talking about suicide. It is something that is impacting the Black community at alarming rates, and it needs to be highlighted, and it needs to be discussed. It just does. So I may not get everything right today. My semantics may be off. I just ask for a space for leniency and for understanding when it comes to this discussion. And let's put on our seatbelts and let's go for it. Also, this may not be a long episode, and it might be a long episode. So, or we might just meet in a damn mill. And yes, the hell I said mill. All right. So, also, excuse the way I sound because I am congested like a motherfucker. All right. We have a lot to discuss. So, the catalyst for me bringing this episode to y'all today is because on Tuesday, December, what day was it? 13th, we received news that Steven, Twitch boss, committed suicide. And you know what? There is a politically correct way to say that. And it is said he died by suicide. For some reason, it's taboo now to say committed suicide. So just for those of us to know better and to move better in different spaces and circumstances, he died by suicide. And what was particularly striking about his death is because he appeared so happy. Everything that he put out was happy and a smile on his face. And for those of you who may not know Steven Twitch Boss, he was Ellen DeGeneres' DJ on her show. Handsome black guy, always wore like a really dope fedora, kind of cocked to the side a little bit, and he would get the crowd moving. He even became one of the executive producers of the show later on in the seasons when kind of it was close to getting canceled, because I guess Ellen couldn't fulfill the rest of the shows because of her scandals that were going on. So he stepped in a more vital role there. That's where I came into knowing him. People before the Ellen show knew him from So You Think You Can Dance. I believe that's the show that he was on. And he just was a light a brilliant light. So it came as such a shock when the person that lights up the room snuffs out their own light. With that being said, it's such a hallmark of a person that is on the edge, that is literally on the precipice and ready to jump. But how do you know the smiling faces from the fake smiling faces? It's hard to tell because usually these people are chameleons. You don't know that they're suffering inside, especially if they're just so congenial and they have a good word of advice for everybody, and they're just so nice and so kind. I say I should have named this episode "Check on Your Happy Friends," but I wanted to get straight to the point in the title. But the alternate title is going to be called Check on Your Happy Friends. Because the happy friends are the ones who need the most care because they are the ones who are checked on the least. They are the ones who've experienced a lot of trauma in their back life, who've experienced a lot of grief and a lot of pain, and want to cultivate and curate the spaces around them to reflect happiness, to be the antithesis of what they've been through in their former years. The thing is, doing that for too long, you start to neglect the real sides of you that need administrative care and that need emotional care. And the people around you don't know that you're in pain or that you're barely making it by because they're yet leeching off of the happiness that you're providing to the room, the comfort and the care that you're providing to the room. And I can speak to this because I have been one of those people, and I am one of those people, but I have to put checks and balances into place to where I don't jump off the cliff because I've been there before, and we're going to talk about it, okay? But first, let me bring y'all the cold hard numbers. I like to substantiate whatever I'm talking about with the facts. According to the Minority Health and Human Services website, this article was published May 2021, and it gives us the findings for 2019. So, in 2019, suicide was the second leading cause of death for Blacks or African Americans ages 15 to 24. The death rate from suicide for Black or African American men was 4 times greater than for African American women in 2018. The overall suicide rate for Black or African Americans was 60% lower than white people in 2018. Now, they said non-Hispanic white population, basically white folks. Now, and it also says Black females grades 9 to 12 were 60% more likely to attempt suicide in 2019 as compared to their white counterparts of the same age. This is startling. And I feel like Black people have so many environmental factors that play into our psychosis. We're already grappling with the fact that we're dealing with systematic racism, and it has not lifted its foot off our neck since the inception of it. We're also dealing with health and wellness, that some things are not as available to us as our counterparts because of systematic racism, of the poverty line. We can't afford it. Then we're also dealing with the police brutality. It's too much. And it's like our forefathers didn't even have the luxury to die by their own hands because they were too busy having their hands on the plow. They were too busy trying to create a better future for us. And now that this current generation is in the quote unquote better future, what do we even have to look forward to? Because if this is what our civil rights afforded us, is Why even look for another day? Where do you find solace? Where do you find rest when you really have to search before you go anywhere? Is this a safe place for black people? I can't travel to Europe like I want to without researching, is this country safe? Because racism is everywhere and is more prevalent and horrible in Europe than it is in America, because in Europe they have this veneer of, oh, we're just too fancy. Your entertainers came over here and they found a safe space in Europe. They loved it over here. No, they are just as insidious with their racism as we are over here in America. Ask somebody, look at some interviews, and you will definitely see what that's about. Actually, if I remember, I will link a podcast episode of another creator down below. And one entertainer from Europe talks about the harrowing experiences he had as a kid growing up in 1960s Europe. How they hurled insults and yelled pejoratives while he was crossing the street. Even he couldn't even find rest coming from school or going to school because he would be chased by skinheads. This happened in Europe. So I'm saying that to say, where can we find, as a black people, a safe haven? Where can you find that? I'm still struggling to figure that out till this day. Let's keep it moving. According to the University of Houston's EDU website, suicide rates have increased dramatically among African Americans. I'll be reading a little excerpt from an article written by Lori Fickman, and it was published February 2nd, 2022. So, it says, a list that seems to keep growing of high-profile African Americans believed to have died by suicide in the last few weeks. Here's the list. Mayor of Hyattsville, Maryland, Kevin Ward, he was 44 years old. Former Miss USA TV correspondent and attorney, Chesley Christ, she was 30 years old. Walking Dead star, Moses Mosley, he was 31 years old. Ian Alexander, a director and an actor and a college student, was 26 years old, and he is the son of Regina King. We also have Jack Knight. He was 28 years old when he took his own life, and he was a comic. He had his own TV show. He was really on the rise and set to be one of the biggest stars out here in Hollywood. And then we have Stephen Twitch Boss. He was 40 years old, a TV star, a great dancer, and entertainer. According to Rita Walker, a professor at the University of Houston and the author of The Unapologetic Guide to Black Mental Health, she says, anything that is perceived as mental health related is taboo in the black community. To further complicate things, getting help is seen as a weakness, so folks press on even when they are struggling. Doing so is a part of a cultural legacy of survival in the face of brutal circumstances, says Walker. Prior to the pandemic, suicide deaths were increasing dramatically for black adults in the U.S. The rates have continued to increase during the pandemic. Over the last decade, suicide rates in the United States have increased dramatically among racial and ethnic minorities, and black Americans in particular. Suicide deaths occur across the lifespan and have increased for black youth, but the highest rate of death is among black Americans aged 25 to 34 years of age. This situation is almost like an epidemic because we're losing our people on all fronts, on all sides. And then you marry that with the pandemic. Black people are sequestered and we're dying at higher amounts than our counterparts because of where we live and what we've been predisposed to and our comorbidities. And you mean to tell me we're supposed to be okay coming out of a 2 to 3 year pandemic? That it is a incubator for mental illness. It's an incubator for violence, for self-violence. It is It's the perfect storm to create the perfect monster known as depression, known as anxiety. And it seems like there's almost no way to help the situation. And I'm going to talk to y'all from an educator's point of view because I used to work in the school system. I was a substitute for many years. And after the pandemic, the children changed. We saw an influx in behavioral issues, in anger, in the fights, in the disrespect towards the teachers, all of those things. Because to go through a pandemic like that, and it just happened so abruptly. Because literally, one day we were in school before like spring break, and the next thing you know, we're not coming back after spring break. That is triggering to a lot of people, to a lot of students that had a set regimen. That because mental health relies sometimes on a regimen. If something drastically switches, that could be the factor that sends somebody over the edge. It it really sent a lot of kids back to environments that were abusive, physically, sexually, emotionally, verbally. It sent kids back to environments that were food insecure because at school, that was the only meal that some of them even received in a day. It sent some of the autistic kids and children back to parents that did not want them in the first place, that enjoyed taking them to school because they got a respite away from them. I am not surprised that suicides amplified or increased during and after the pandemic. I'm not, because we already go through so much already. You put that on top of it, like I said, it makes the perfect storm. According to everydayhealth.com, an article entitled 5 Reasons Suicide is on the Rise in the Black Community According to a Psychiatrist, written by Maya Nigel Hoskin, PhD, goes to say, a report published in November 2021 by the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention showed that although the overall rate of suicide in the United States decreased by 3% in 2020, the rate of suicide actually increased among many men of color, including black men, during this time. Between 2011 and 2022, the suicide rate among black men was 3 times that of black women, the Suicide Prevention Resource Center reports. This information is startling because you don't hear many black men cry out for help. You don't, but we are the primary ones that are self-harming and dying by suicide. What? Is there such a stigma to get help? Do we need more resources? Do we need more infrastructure for the black man? There's so many black men that are shackled by patriarchy. So many black men oppress black women and oppress so many other people like the LGBTQ community that they're suffering their own selves. These heterosexual black men are literally suffering and imposing suffering on other people that they can't even get the help that they need. We need healthy black men. If we do not have healthy black men, we will not have healthy black households. We will not have healthy black children. We will not have healthy black women. It starts from the head. Now, some of you may be like, the man is not the head. For me, any cultural system has a head. And out here in America, the male is seen as that head. In other cultures as well. And forgive me if I misspeak. Correct me in the comments. However, if you look at the head, i.e. the man, in any infrastructure, socially, in a familiar structure, you'll see the health of that whole lineage from looking at that male. White men, black men, Indian men, because they set the ball rolling for everything that comes behind them. Black women are asymmetrically burdened because they are out of alignment. They're taking on too much stress. They're taking on too much responsibility when it comes to taking care of the household, because that, I don't believe that that is the mantle that they are supposed to uphold. I believe that that mantle is reserved for the black man. However, there has been such a brutalization of the black man in where he could really stand. To have a strong pillar, i.e., the black man, show up in the world, that threatens a lot of the systems of the people who want to oppress us. If you can weaken the stronger vessel of the two, physically stronger of the two, you can weaken the whole lineage. They knew where to start. They knew where to. They started with the black man. They made him smaller. They beat him down. They weakened him in so many ways, embarrassed him, shamed him in front of his counterpart, the black woman, who is strong in her own right. It's not a bad thing to say a woman is strong, and black women have almost disowned their inherent strength because it's been used to further oppress them, when it was used to uplift the black household, the black infrastructure. Just imagine how, if a black woman is this strong, just imagine how strong a black man actually is. Actually is. If she's that strong and to hold, to support that, can you imagine how strong a black man really, honestly, truly is? If it were not for the damage and the denigration of of the body and the mind and the soul of a black man. That's why black men are under attack. And this is not some type of thing that absolves black men from their callous and ignorant and ridiculous behavior, because by no means am I doing that. However, what I'm saying is black men have a place, and they've been beaten down, and they have been weakened to a point that they're tired and they are taking themselves out. I feel so strongly about this because I've experienced my own bouts of depression, and the pressure to perform as a black man who is conscious of his environment, who wants to uh, go above and beyond, who wants to exceed the stereotypes, but not code switch. Be his full self, and live in this world and be a vital member of society. It's pressure, because you have to move and you have to groove in white spaces that often do their best to shrink you, to do their best to contort you into this smiling marionette, to where if they pull the string this way, you will respond that way. And it is really incumbent upon our survival to respond in these ways, because the consequences for us being exactly who we are in this world, they're detrimental. I know of men who even raise the tone and pitch of their voice to not seem as threatening, because white people deem that threatening. Other cultures deem that threatening for a black man to have a deep voice, especially if that voice is not sexualized. Do you see what I'm talking? Like, it is such a pressure, and I see why black men are taking themselves out. I get it, because the pressure to perform, the pressure to show up, despite all of the setbacks and despite all of the hardships, that shit is almost insurmountable at times. So this Everyday Health article continues to say, what's driving the rise in suicides among black Americans? Number one, it says is social media. It ramps up the pressure to fit in. Oh, by all means it does. You're seeing these beautiful bodies. You're seeing these nice cars. You're seeing people completing projects, people filming, people booking, people getting raises, doing all of these things, and you're sitting here. You're sitting here wishing that you could have better. I personally, I personally have a problem sometimes with the highlight reels I see other people post because it does more of a disservice than it does good. I recently posted something on TikTok that said, check on your happy friends, like I'm talking about with you all right now. And I said that in starting my own business, because y'all know I have that episode 30 and broken in your 30s. I I almost created a TikTok when I was sitting in my car about to pawn my computer to make payroll. But I decided not to do that because I was like, I don't want the people out there to be saddened by my reality right now. But how many people would have been encouraged by my reality at that time? Instead of curating content to give this false impression that life is good, I want people to smile when they see me. That makes them feel better. Sometimes it makes people feel better to see the fact that you did not book it. You did not get the plaque. You did not get the award, but you put in the hard work because so many people are working without the acclaim, without the status. And life seems unbearable sometimes. Social media is it's definitely a catalyst for mental health issues and for ADD because I almost cannot even focus. I will go into Instagram specifically to look up something or to post something that's important, and I will get distracted because what? The first page you see is so many different boxes and squares, so many things, and it's just rattling off in your brain, and it's sensory overload. It's too much, and I feel like these apps do this to keep you on there longer. You first open up TikTok, there's a video, and then the search bar is like a very white little magnifying glass that you have to even look for to press. And by the time you found it, you're already engaged in what the video is talking about. It's too much. Social media incubates this mania almost that you feel. This I've almost been on the phone and felt like I was battling an addiction because I wanted to put it down, but I almost couldn't. The dopamine and serotonin releases, it's too much. And when you put that away and when you're done with it all, you fall into a depression. It's very evil when you really think about it. But then they put this thing in your hand. It's like, if you do this, if you participate in this, you'll get more sales, you'll get more money. This is imperative to your success by being on this app. Wouldn't it be amazing if we could design our own landing page to where there is nothing but a search bar? There's no myriad of pictures of videos just popping up. It's not this hyper colorful thing that we see. It's just nothing but a blank screen, and then we can open the app and do what we want to do, or we can search for what we're looking for and exit. It's not built like that though, because it's built to mentally enslave you with dopamine, with those hits to get you high and to make you come back for more and more and more. It's really sick. And in this new year, I low-key want to delete all of my social media because the only reason I want to post is to impress somebody else. I've experienced these life things. Why do other people need to see them? Why do they need to? Were you there? You were not. So if you weren't there, why do you need to see it? But the thing is, if you're going to see it, why don't we show the truth? Why do we only show the highlight reels? I think we need to really look and pay attention to social media because it's causing way more damage than it's causing good. Number 2 is mental health stigma impedes Black people from seeking help. So, from what I'm seeing, this has been kind of hard for me to digest because I see an influx of Black people going to therapy. But maybe that's not enough. Maybe that's a certain Black person who has a certain job, who has certain resources available to them. But I feel like we're moving into this culture of Black people understanding the insidious effects of slavery and Jim Crow that has been almost interweaving into our bloodstream, into our sinews, and that causes us to act in certain ways. And we're noticing that the way our parents behaved and the way our grandparents behaved was a reaction and was necessary for their survival and for our survival. And we don't have to operate anymore out of a place of survival. We can really operate in a place of thriving, because survival, you have to react. For to thrive, you can really respond. And those are two different type of things. If you think of animals, to survive, they react, they bite, they lash out, they attack, or they run. For somebody who can thrive in a place, you can make the decision whether to engage with that person or not. It's not so knee-jerk reaction. You really have a buffer between what you decide to do and what you don't. And usually if you have that buffer, you will make a decision that lends itself to the overall health of everybody involved. Wellness is where it's at, okay? And I think there's this paradigm shift that's leading people, black people, more to wellness. I'm all here for the exodus and for the entrance into wellness. However, they're saying that there is this thing that's keeping people away. It's taboo. I think it's taboo because maybe more men who are successful, more men who are the rappers, the entertainers, maybe it's important for them to stand up and say, I'm in therapy. I need help because the way I'm reacting is not the way in which I should be responding to my life and to the lives of other people as well. We're going to move on. Number 3 says treatment is often less accessible to black people. And that is true. That's very true. According to the American Psychological Association 2005 census, the Bureau showed that black people were more than 7 times more likely to live in neighborhoods with high rates of poverty and little to no access to mental health care compared to white people, despite having the same risk of mental illness. That is totally reflective of systematic racism. Now, some of you might be like, oh, here we go. But I'm telling you, if you look at the infrastructure of the systematic racism, it pigeonholes you into a certain neighborhood. It gives you access to certain jobs and certain proclivities within your neighborhood. You're around certain people. You're around certain mindsets. You can only go so far. People discriminate against you because of how you look, what you do, where you live. And then you get mad because you don't have as much money or resources to even get that mental health that you need. Because we look at mental health as a elective, as something that is indulgent. And it's not indulgent, it's actually necessary to keep life moving and to stay afloat. The article goes on to say, the APA reports almost 25% of black Americans are uninsured and are more likely to see emergency or primary care health practitioners for mental health related concerns, even though these professionals are not as equipped to treat mental and behavioral health issues as mental health professionals are. That's a thing too, because it reminds me of working as a paraprofessional in school, because I also sub too. A lot of black children are misdiagnosed as autistic, and a lot of black children aren't diagnosed as autistic. It's a twofold thing, and all in all, somebody along the line isn't getting the resources and is not getting the help that they need. It's really just disgusting when you really think of it. 4, black people continually face racism and discrimination. The murder of George Floyd in 2020 sparked nationwide protests against racism in the United States, which black people have faced for centuries. For many black Americans, Harris says, Floyd's murder was a tipping point for increased rates of anxiety and depression related to racism. Certainly, George Floyd's death added to the extreme anxiety that many black people were already experiencing with the everyday effects of living with discrimination and racism and the resulting trauma from these experiences. Floyd's death is a sobering example of a type of racism called structural racism, which is racism that pervades public policies, institutions, housing, education, and the justice system, among other areas. Black Americans are at a greater risk of being targeted, profiled, and arrested by law enforcement for minor offenses, and the rate of incarceration of black people is 6 times more than that of white people, states the National Alliance to End Homelessness. Mic drop. This is what we are facing. And George Floyd was basically a public lynching. And for millions of people to see, a public lynching at the hands of cops that are supposed to be protecting us. So imagine we see a public lynching, and we're not living in the 60s when that stuff really started, because we think people were hanging slaves. No, their slaves were their property. Why would you ruin your property like that? Slaves were expensive. The brutality of in the terrorism against black bodies once we were freed happened after slavery. Once we were freed. It's insidious. It's horrifying. It's a horror story. And a lot of black people are living in a horror story. And you might say, what makes the difference? Why weren't black people dying by suicide back in the day? I'm sure a lot of people were. If you look at the ship that transported many of our ancestors to the Americas and to the islands and stuff like that, many of those black people decided to die along that transatlantic slave trade. They did. When they got on this soil, I believe that hope is a guiding factor that keeps the soul, that keeps the spirit alive. Because if you have hope, you know that there could possibly be a brighter day, if not for you, for your offspring. And I feel like during that time, they had hope because we're free, even though we're terrorized, even though laws are now made to systematically oppress us and then impress in the minds around us that we are inferior. Because it's not so, and then impress in our own minds that we are inferior, because we have to overcome so many of those inherent racist and anti-black thoughts on our own on a daily basis. So just imagine what our counterparts are just naturally thinking with no type of cognitive dissonance going on. It's really wild when you really break it all the way down. You would think I had an African American studies degree. By the way, I'm talking about some of this shit. I don't, but I read a lot and I listen to a lot. My thing is, I think back in the day, hope kept a lot of us alive. A lot of our ancestors and grandparents alive. Today, seeing a public lynching and we've gotten this far, what hope do we have? Some of us are millionaires. Some of us are living in very nice places. Some of us have our own jobs, have our own cars, are living modest, well-to-do, easy lives. And that seems like, the cornucopia. That seems like the promised land. We're now head in head with whites when you look at things on a superficial level. But when you look at things on a judicial level or even a morality or ethics level, we are not still neck and neck. We're not treated as equals. In many cases, we are not. Across the nation, okay? If we can really be truthful and honest. So what does better even look like if this is all we have to deal with? George Floyd was very triggering and it was very traumatic. And I think that black people, I really think that we are very resilient. But I really do believe that we are traumatized beyond measure. And we're only chipping a little bit at that enormous block that is our trauma, little by little. And I don't know, I pray that there's a better day, but will there be a better day? Because if America gets right with the racism, what does that mean for our brothers in Berlin, in Paris? What does that mean for them? Number 5, and the last point in this article, is many black people are frequently exposed to violence. Although not all black people live in impoverished or physically dangerous environments caused by social issues such as structural racism, research suggests that black people experience disproportionately higher rates of exposure to violence compared with white people. Like racism, continued exposure to violence may factor into increasing suicide rates among black people. Witnessing violence and living in communities with increased numbers of violent crimes is another aspect of trauma that may lead to increasing suicide rates among black people, says Harris. This is so true, and this is what I've been talking about before I even reached this point. And people may bring up, what about black on black violence, black on black crime? That is not true. That argument does not weigh up. Of course, black people kill black people. Look at the proximity that of that community. If you look at it, white people kill white people. Hispanic people kill Hispanic people. We don't we don't talk about white on white crime. It's not ever discussed because we don't think it's a thing. But if we can talk about black on black crime, we can conversely talk about white on white crime, which we don't. So since we don't do that, black on black crime is not a thing. If you put enough Indian people in the same space, in the same pressure cooker with poverty, increased violence of police, all of these factors, there's going to be violence. There's going to be. Black on black crime is nothing but an avenue to further put black people in the category of a lesser than species. It does nothing but dehumanize us. It talks about us in terms of like animals in the zoo. And that's all that is. It is nothing but a tool to weaponize black people against black people, and they're in categorizes black people as manic, mean creatures and terrorists, which we are not. If anything, black people are some of the most loving, kind people that you'll ever meet. It's just the circumstances and the situations that we are living in that breeds these outcomes. So you may be wondering, I understand why an impoverished person may be induced to die by suicide. What about the people that you named before? They have wealth, they have status, they're good looking, they're high on the totem pole. And when you are that type of black person, you're equal to white people in a lot of ways when you can remove yourself. Not always true, but for the sake of indulging that conversation, why are these high functioning, successful black people dying by suicide? Let's talk about Chesley Christ. Christ died at age 30 after she fell from an elevated position from a building in New York City's Hell Kitchen area on January 30th, 2022. Her death was ruled suicide by the New York City Medical Examiner's Office. Christ was crowned Miss USA in 2019. She worked as a model and as an entertainment news correspondent, as well as a lawyer for a firm based in Charlotte, North Carolina. But behind the curtain of her public life, she struggled with depression. Her mother, April Simpkins, talked about her daughter's death on the Red Table Talk. And I'm reading an article from NBCnews.com, just to give credit. Okay, April Simpkins said, this was not her first suicide attempt. She attempted suicide before, and it was right after the first attempt that she and I grew very close. I wanted her to feel comfortable calling me if there was ever a crisis. She says, she began taking all the right steps. She began seeing a counselor. She was getting good sleep at night. She knew all the things to do. Her mother goes on to say, my daughter was dealing with high-functioning depression, which she hid from everyone, including me, her closest confidant, until very shortly before her death. She says, we FaceTimed, we talked or texted one another all day, every day. She says talking to her daughter was one of the best parts of her day, and her smile and her laugh were infectious, and she was her very best friend. More than a daughter, a best friend. It is striking that somebody that you can talk to and laugh with every day can take their own life the next day. High functioning, high performing black people Black excellence is an albatross around a lot of our necks. It's dragging us down. It is a burden. I have no words, but I'm gonna try to find some because it's a podcast. It's it's strangling us. We to uphold this perfection that is also almost unattainable. The social pressure to be something great, to be something relatable, to be kind, to be unassuming, to be seen as a safe black person, to seen as a successful black person, to be seen as competent, as it is too much. It's unbearable. This woman, I remember she had a suicide note and it detailed how she felt like she wasn't enough, like how she didn't have kids, how she the woman was Miss USA, a lawyer, and worked on television. I saw her on TV, entertainment news, before she passed away. Very beautiful girl. Very bright skinned, like curly hair, like the epitome of what people pedestal as beauty, for black folks. The closest to quote unquote whiteness. Could have the pick of the litter, if we really gonna call a spade, could takes her own life because it's too much. High functioning black people need to be checked on. People who are driving the nicest cars, opening those businesses, look like they got it going on social media. If you are friends with one of those people, check on that person. Check on that person. I don't care how much money this person has in their bank account. Check on that person. Talk to them. And maybe they might not need just an encouraging word. They might need some medicine. I'm not even going to hold you. I think depression it's a neurological disease, I believe. It's a mental disease. It cannot just be soothed by yoga, by the meditation ball. Sometimes you need some medicine to keep you from jumping. And I feel like the stigma is not always with therapy, is more with medication, because I don't want to be seen as crazy. Get that out of our heads. Let's get that out of our heads. If you have to take medicine to stay alive to see a better day, that's what you have to do. Because prayer alone is not always the answer. Meditation alone is not always the answer. Because sometimes you have a smile on your face, but you are grieving in your heart. And it leaves us sometimes powerless. Like, what can we do? What can we do? If I'm talking to my friend every day, how do I know that she's going through? So it's if I'm talking to my brother every day, how do I know he's being honest with me? Who was there for Steven, Twitch boss? Who was there for him? Because out of all the people who shared all the condolences, I was going to read them, but the majority of them say he was so happy. He was a light. He lit up every room he entered in. Out of all of those people, nobody said, how are you emotionally, bro? How are you mentally? Nobody said anything like that. His wife, and I'm not blaming anybody because this can be right under your nose. High functioning depression is right under our noses, and it shows up in a myriad of black people every day that are very successful. But it's those people who are very successful and are very attached to high earning figures and bling, bling, bling. Those are the people that are taking their lives. So it doesn't matter about depression is not a respecter of person. Suicide is not a respecter of it doesn't. These are just the truths, okay? Because ampersand, you can be wealthy and black and die by suicide. You can be poor and black and die by suicide. Both actualities are true on an everyday basis. And the only difference is the Malcolms The Stephanies that are in the hoods, are in the suburbs, they aren't getting national coverage. We're only highlighting the celebrities. That's the only difference. Otherwise, it would probably be somebody on the news about suicide every day. They're not getting the publicity. But we got to use these people who are really big stars to have us turn our face towards the Malcolms and the Stephanies, who are right beside us in our churches, leading praise and worship. Anybody that you see is doing some excellent work that you like, dang, they call, check on their mental health. Ask them, how are you doing? What do you need? Talk, let's have lunch. Let's talk. Because anybody that you see is superseding in anything and they black, check on them. Check on them. See how they doing. Because they may not be okay. The happiest, goofiest man in the room, he may not be okay. If he is happy every day, he may not be okay. If she is happy every day, she may not be okay. Never assume. Always make room. Never assume, make room. You feel me? That is really what we need these days. And we also need the people who are on these high pedestals, the people who are in the limelight. We need their confessions about their own struggles with mental illness, because that may be something that leads the regular folks to get help. Because it makes it seem like you're just like us. I want to share a message that Tyler Perry posted on his Instagram story following the death of Stephen Twitch Boss. Take a listen.
I, like the rest of the world, am shocked by the death of Stephen Boss Twitch. And it prompted me to come on to talk to any of you who are going through hard times, struggling. I've only met him a couple times. He was always full of life and seemed like such a light. But with that said, I just want to take you back to a time in my life where I tried to commit suicide a couple of times because it was so dark. I didn't think it would get any better. I had endured so much pain, so much abuse, sexual abuse. It was all so hard to just move through that I thought the only way to make this better, this pain go away, is to end my life. Had any of those attempts happened, I would have missed the best part of my life.
Tabitha Brown even did a video tribute to Stephen as well. And she actually broke down in tears. And I thought that was very heartening to see, because it shows that even the mother of social media has days where she sheds a tear. And you get to see the humanity of the people that we idolize. And it's important to see Black people be vulnerable and admit that we crumble under the pressures of life too. I can be a strong Black man, and I can have soft, vulnerable, unprotected, weak moments. And I put all those adjectives around the word weak because the weak alone has this connotation unto itself. But to understand that you can also be a strong Black woman and be soft and have times of uncertainty and fear and need a shoulder to cry on. Tears are so normal. You may ask yourself, Aubri, you seem pretty happy all the time. Are you one of those people, those high functioning Black excellence people that are struggling? And I would have to say yes, I am. I deal with mental pressures and strains, and sometimes I don't feel like I can make it through myself. Earlier this year, I found myself calling the National Suicide Hotline because when when I was on the road Googling, does it hurt to die by carbon monoxide poisoning? I knew that I needed somebody to talk to. I knew that I needed somebody to talk to because I didn't want to be here anymore. I didn't want to do it anymore because I have been working my ass off. I've been trying my hardest to punch through a wall to get to the other side, to where I can be financially stable, to where I can be in a place where I can support myself, to where I can experience more joys in life. And I was just like, this is not it. I don't want to do this anymore. And I've always kind of felt like death was imminent anyway, because if anybody has ever been around a sudden death, that leaves an indelible mark on you that you don't get over. You just don't walk over that shit. That it follows you and it stays with you, and it's hard to kind of to rummage through it to get to the other side. I'll have to talk about that in another episode about the death of my father, because that impacted me in a really strong way, and I think I'm still trying to figure that out. However, sometimes I think about my dad's death, and I'm like, you lucky so and so. You don't have to do this anymore. And it's hard being the jester. It's hard being the clown. It's hard because clowns, we have a painted smile. That's not it's not always ours. And sometimes you really just need somebody to see how you're doing, to check on you, to see if you're okay. What do you need, you know? And to be truthful, sometimes even today, even these days, I feel like I don't want to be here. And that's just the truth. I am taking things day by day, okay? As a lot of us are. As a lot of us are. And I believe I mentioned earlier, this has been a long episode, how I curated my content to exclude those hard moments. But if I allowed the world to see what I've been through, maybe that would foster community and I would not be alone, and I would have somebody to hold my hand and be with me to let me know that this is temporary. The adage, you're doing something permanently to address a temporary situation, is true. However, when you're in the muck of it, you don't, it feels, you know that there's nothing that's going to change. It feels everlasting. It feels eternal. And the only remedy is to press the exit button. Sometimes I wonder, why are we allowed to die like that? How are we allowed to die by suicide? We can't tickle ourselves. Why are we allowed to take ourselves out? It almost seems like, is that our exit button? Is that the game over that says you don't have to do this anymore? This is we all opted into this life. Some people believe that, and you can opt out. How do you want to go? It's when you think about it like that, could that be a possibility? I don't know why we are I don't know why that's possible. And I don't even know I don't know. It's a lot of things I do not know. But what I do know is that there can be a better day. And remember what I said, that hope is sometimes the only thing that we have to hold on to. It might be a hard week. You might be homeless right now. You might be hungry right now. You might be lonely right now. But it's just right now. It don't have to be forever. Black man, I'm talking to you. You don't have to suffer alone. Do you understand me? One man to another, you don't have to suffer alone. If somebody won't listen to you, somebody else will. I promise you, there are people that care about you. There are strangers that care about you sometimes more than your own family. You got to almost fight to be here and fight for your life. And I know you're tired of fighting, but just to lay down, either life will take you out or you'll take your own life out. I want you to know how significant you are, even to your partners, your the mother of your children, your auntie, your friends. You're so important, man. Did you know that? Somebody wakes up and thinks about you in the morning. And if you don't have any family, if you say you don't have any friends, it's just you by yourself, think about yourself and know how important you are. Somebody can see your face and just enjoy your smile. Do you have a job that you go to every day? Do you have somebody that you see every day? You left a mark, whether you know it or not. Also, my brothers and my sisters, put less stock into social media, okay? Because it's causing us to go down this spiral. Those people are not necessarily the real community, the real people that will call you and ask you how you're doing. If you need to have a phone bill, if you need to be connected to some Wi-Fi to have friends, those that ain't your real circle. That's not your real community. That's your internet community. I need we need to build more real world communities because that is the way that we encourage and cultivate joy and belonging. We cannot do this on our own. That's why jobs are important. That's why during the pandemic we were so isolated and it caused a lot of us to sink into depression because as much as you hate your coworkers every day you go in there, it is vital to our social survival and our mindset to be around people. You are not an island, my sister, my brother. I know all too well about wanting to take my life. I really low key don't even want to be here now. Okay? And then I understand about high achieving. And when you get what you worked for, you're just like, oh, okay, this is cool. You can't. You're not even happy because it was in the pursuit of the chase. That's where you found the fun. It wasn't in the catch. And so you set the bar somewhere else. I made this amount of money. Okay, I got it. Now I want to make this. It's never ending. We have to learn how to be content. And if the the bar is somewhere and we reach that goal that we have had our eyes on, we need to examine how we feel in that moment. Because as for me, I negotiated and forgive me if I'm all over the place. I'm just trying to talk from my heart. But I just negotiated a higher pay for my business from one of my clients. And it's the most money I've made consistently in a long time. But when I got it, and the man said, just invoice me whatever you feel. What? When I got that, I didn't feel like I thought I would feel. I kind of was like, cool, that's a blessing. And I think maybe I'll feel more, you know, accomplished when the checks start rolling in. Because if anybody knows dealing with clientele, you gotta, sometimes the checks be on time, sometimes they don't. However, like I'm learning to take inventory of what I am feeling at my given moments. Because if the lows make me feel like shit and the highs make me kind of feel like shit, where do I gain my joy? Where do I see the sun? And it honestly is not in any of those career goal oriented moments. It's really in the moments to where I'm with myself or I'm with family or friends or going to the library thrills me. Recording these episodes sometimes thrill me. Those things is what I want more of. So yes, and like I tell you, before I was researching how to unalive myself by carbon monoxide poisoning in the car. Does it hurt? And when I saw myself doing that, I said, okay, I need to get some help. So I called the suicide hotline and I talked to a guy, but he helped me, and it was good to know that somebody cared. And I think I just need to call to just kind of snap myself back into reality and know that, okay, you might feel like doing this, but you don't have to do it. Like if I was at home, if I lived alone and had my own garage, I don't know how far I would have went. So I there's a lot of saving grace in a lot of situations. And before you take that step to do something that is so final in your life, to make that's the biggest decision of your life, I say think twice. And if that's the decision that you feel like you should do, call the suicide hotline. Call them and let them know to where they can give you an avenue that is better. Because I'm telling you, this right now moment is not your forever moment. It won't be. Things can and they do get better. I'm telling you, they do. Rely on your community too. If you have family and friends that you love and that you know love you, call them and let them know how you feeling. Because somebody got to listen. I don't care if you got to scream it from the rooftops. Find somebody. And for those of us who are not dealing with those mental pressures, reach out to people that you know are going through a particularly hard time. Check in on them and see how they're doing. Sometimes you got to wrestle your way into people's lives to make sure that they want to still be on this side of life. Life is not easy. It's not. It is not easy. And I ain't the first one in line to tell you that it is. It's really kind of ironic because you think with the interconnectedness of social media that we'd have more of a insight into what really goes on in people's lives. We will really be more aware of the interior. But as much as we see every day, as much life as we see people experience every day through social media, we don't know anything about the interior. The exterior only shows you 5% of what a person really experiences on a day-to-day basis. We get like a snapshot of a person's whole day and really think we know a person based on that. Before Chesley took her own life, she posted on Instagram talking about how she was at peace and how life was great or whatever. And before Twitch boss, before Steven passed away, he was on Jennifer Hudson's show and they were talking about, him and his wife were talking about having more children. And they played a video of him and his wife dancing, and I remember him saying, "Look how genuinely happy I look." And I was like, that's an odd thing for somebody to really say. So some things were probably already being foreshadowed there because a lot of the times maybe he was just putting on a smile. But that smile that we see via social media, that's not always the truth. But it's very ironic that that's the case. Now you might wonder, and I ain't gonna hold y'all too long because we're going over an hour. You might wonder how I cope with my feelings of depression and suicidal ideation. I'll give you a few. I call a friend because it shows me that there's commonality in my experience. I don't. One of the main factors that this life will use, and in church slang, the enemy will use, is to trick you into thinking that you're alone. That's one of the main things, that there's nobody out there that understands you, that shares your same experience, that nobody will relate. Oh, baby, there's so many people in this world that understand exactly what you're going through, that they can't help but relate to what you experiencing. Another thing that I do, I listen to comedy shows because laughter, it lifted me out of feeling sullen. Like, laughter heals a lot. Sometimes you just need to see another perspective. Let somebody talk to you and joke you into feeling good about your day. And I another thing I do, I make sure I eat as well as I can, because a lot of the foods that we eat are directly correlated to how we feel. Gut health is very important. Limiting the foods that we eat that have dyes in them and that have a high sugar content. It puts you up on a high at first, but then after that, you're back down in the dumps, and you're judging your body. Because I feel like I do. I feel like I really do have body dysmorphia. I don't see my body how other people see my body. I could be thin as a rail, and I still feel like I'm big as a house. And that's something that I have to manage. And I manage that by, I go to the gym. Like, I may not lose a pound, but just going to the gym convinces me that I'm taking care of my temple. Because, and also, when I used to work as a para with special needs children, I went to the gym every day after work because that job was so stressful. And a gym regimen really improves your mood. I don't know what to call it, but I know that a gym membership, baby, and you go and get in your sweat, and you go exercise at least 30 minutes to an hour a day, it'll change your life in more ways than one. So those are the ways that I cope with life. Like, you have to use life to cope with life, but you have to introduce things and hobbies and, fun in this experience, because it will swallow you whole. I love to sing, so I started taking vocal lessons, which led me into all the other stuff I'm doing. I love to act, so I joined the acting class just for the hell of it, because I wanted to. It wasn't, I'm going to get in this acting class and I'm going to be on TV. It wasn't that. It was like the craft. And with all of that being said, that still does not negate the fact that there are people out there that cannot be talked off the ledge with a gym membership, or with a pass to a comedy show, or a hobby. It's not that superficial for them. It's deep rooted. It's very it's an illness, and it's not something that can be solved with just, oh, let's just go out, let's get drinks. It's not that. If you feel like it's deeper than that, I also say go to your doctor. If reaching out, if calling the suicide hotline is not working, you're still feeling like that, do everything to save your life before you decide to take it. Do everything to save your life, because when you have done everything to save your life, guess what? It will be saved. It will be. If you do everything, go to the doctor and get help. Somebody will help you. And it may not stop. You might need to switch your medication. Who knows? It may not be the first try. But get the help that you need. Surround yourself with community. Community, doctors, love, joy. Those are the places, those are the things, those are the people that can keep you off the ledge. The suicide hotline, they changed the number. They've shortened it, thank God. You ain't got to remember this long thing. The number is 988. The number to the suicide hotline is 988. And if you feel uncomfortable calling that number, call your friend. I cannot stress this enough. Call your mom, call your friends. If they do not make space for you, call somebody else. If they don't make space for you, email me and we'll talk. And I'm serious, because there needs to be community to hold us up. It is not easy. It's not easy. And I can't stress that. I know I done said it about 25,000 times. It ain't easy. It's not. So, once again, that suicide number is 988. And feel free to call them or email me at aubrioshae@gmail.com. That is AUBRIOSHAE@gmail.com. And we can discuss and talk about what you need to talk about. Okay? This has been like a long episode. It wasn't filled with much laughter. I'm not going to edit this. I don't even know if I want to go back and listen to it because it's a lot. It's a lot to experience twice. But I will say that I love y'all. I hope this lands in the right lap. And I hope y'all understood my heart and where I'm coming from. And with that being said, remember to examine the ampersands in every situation and circumstance. There's an ampersand even in your lowest moments because you still got life in your body. You still breathing. You're not in pain. If you are in pain, do you have your eyesight? If you have your eyesight, if you don't have that, can you hear? And if you cannot hear, can you feel? There are things, and if you have none of that, is there somebody that loves you? Is there somebody that's taking care of you, that's wiping your bottom, that's feeding you? There is an ampersand. There's some place to be grateful in every situation. Every situation. Do you have water? Do you have shoes? Do you have a shirt? Every situation. Can you talk? Every situation. Examine those ampersands before you make that final vital decision about your life that was given to you by the Creator. Okay? All right. And with that being said, this has been Aubri Oshae with the Ampersand Podcast, and I will see y'all next week. I'm about to record a few more episodes of Ask Aubri, and I'll be sending more of those your way. And once again, I apologize for the late episode, and also rest in peace, Stephen Twitch Boss, because brother, you will be missed. And to all those other brothers out there feeling like Stephen, we love you. And there is space for you, and you don't have to carry such a heavy burden by yourself. Okay? All right, y'all. Stay prayed up, keep the faith, because prayer is important. Prayer may not cure depression, but prayer works for a lot of other things. All right, y'all. Y'all be blessed. Bye.